Hey, once again, everyone, weather for Weather Geeks time. What an October day we had today. Sometimes I say in October when it's awesome, it's really awesome. I kind of think the same thing about May. When you have a really great May day, it doesn't get much better. It's kind of the same thing, I think, in October. You know, we're done with the high heat and high humidity that we can get in the middle of summer. And when you have a crystal clear October day, a crisp morning, followed by the kind of weather in the afternoon that you can shed the jacket and just enjoy the clean, cool air. Boy, it was just one of those days today. We're going to have more great weather over the next couple of days. Wanted to start this evening with something I shared on social earlier, if you missed it. Wanted to compare high-res, low-orbiting satellite pictures from a few weeks ago to today. The last time we had a completely cloud-free day was on September the 18th. And notice everything was still very, very green as far as the foliage is concerned back on September 18th. Fast forward to today. It's kind of a different looking map, right? Well, a couple of things going on here. One, of course, is the foliage is popping, and this is especially apparent up across parts of Canada. But even across northern Ohio, of course, we're seeing some splashes of color here and there. Close to home, you can kind of see a pretty good little batch of color there in Trumbull County and far western Mercer, Crawford, and Ashtabula counties. This is Mosquito Lake right here. Here's Pymatuning. And, of course, in addition to the foliage popping, the ground's also a lot drier. The grass is a little browner than it was a few weeks ago, and so that really stands out, I think. Scroll through this again. This was a few weeks ago. This was today. So definitely a different looking scene, a sign that, yes, the seasons are changing. I'd say the foliage is about a week behind schedule thanks to the warm air that we've had lately. And we had warm air at this time last year. It was summer's last hurrah back around this time last year on the 9th. This was not a record high. It fell short of a record by a few degrees, but 85 is what we did a year ago today. Today's high locally was 69 degrees, and we'll do maybe a degree or two better on Thursday. All right, across the country, at first glance, this looks pretty quiet, but we do have a pretty significant storm off the eastern seaboard that's bringing windy and wet weather to Boston and Providence and Hartford and New York City, and then a mondo Arctic front out here across the western U.S. This is the first really strong fall front of the season. Pretty remarkable what's going to happen in Denver over the next several hours. It was in the lower 80s this afternoon in Denver. It's still 79 as of 5:11 Mountain Time out in Denver, but look at Cheyenne at 38. It's going to go from the lower 80s to wind chills in the teens in Denver in the matter of hours. Overnight tonight, it's going to be dramatically colder. And this happens out there sometimes as Arctic air comes down the front range of the Rockies. You can get these huge temperature swings, but even by Denver standards, this is pretty impressive. And yeah, this is a really sharp front. 70 in International Falls, but 48 in Fargo right now. And of course, that cold air will march east. This is pretty cool. Not often you see this. So what we have going on across parts of Colorado, in neighboring counties, you have a red flag warning. Let me see if I can query these. Let's see here. Is it going to let me show you? Yeah, fire weather warning or red flag warning in the red, and then the next county over is under a freeze warning. So the air is not only, of course, dry and windy, but it is turning colder. And so not often you see those types of advisories right next to each other, but it happens sometimes, especially in the transition seasons out in that part of the country. This will end up being a big snowstorm for parts of the Dakotas and down into the front range of the Rockies, down into the Denver area. So pretty remarkable stuff there. And boy, I love animations like this. Look at this cold front marching east over the next few days. Almost the entire lower 48 impacted somewhat by this cold front over the next handful of days. Now, of course, the temperature change here will not be nearly as dramatic. This front is not going to be as sharp as it rolls through here on Saturday, but it will be a noticeably cooler weekend coming up. After a couple of mild days coming up for your Thursday and for Friday as well. A couple of great days, hardly a cloud in the sky. Friday, great for high school football, Friday evening. Now, we've refined our rain chances with our front on Saturday. Finally, there's some better model agreement on the timing here. So I'm going to allow for showers anytime Saturday morning, but I think by Saturday afternoon, the sun will be breaking out. It's going to be breezy, and it's going to be cooler. In fact, we may reach our high Saturday right around noon. Maybe a little cooler, despite the sun coming out. Maybe a little cooler by mid-afternoon, and definitely not in the lower 70s anymore as we head into the weekend. YSU, 6 o'clock kickoff at the Ice Castle against South Dakota State. I've removed any rain chances from our Penguin game day forecast. Temperatures will be on the chilly side, but nothing unusual for this time of the year. So definitely jacket weather, but it should be a nice clear evening in Youngstown. We are a proud sponsor at 21 WFMJ of the Youngstown Peace Race. Andrew and I will be running in that on Sunday morning, 10 o'clock start. And yeah, it's going to be a little on the cool side, kind of like this morning. Actually, Sunday will be a fairly similar day to today. One difference, though, will be the wind. I think there'll be a noticeable breeze, especially as we get into the afternoon on Sunday. Otherwise, yeah, nice day. Temperatures rising into the upper 50s by midday and into the lower 60s by Sunday afternoon. All right, we're a month away from my annual winter forecast. I've been getting some questions, as I always do at this time of the year, about the winter forecast. People are stumbling across winter forecasts from other sources. Some sources put out their winter forecast before summer was even over. I think that's too early. I think we have to wait for the atmosphere to give us a few more clues. Yes, we can make some assumptions and take some educated guesses early in the fall season, but I think until you're into very late October, early November, at least for me, my confidence in the drivers of the winter pattern are pretty low until we get towards Halloween. That's why I always do my annual winter forecast right around Halloween into the first week of November. This year it'll be on Thursday, November the 7th. Over the next few weeks, I'll be dropping some hints about what I'm looking at when it comes to formulating the winter forecast. One of the kind of unusual things, and something that not a lot of people are aware of, we look at the sun when it comes to making the winter forecast. Now, this is not one of the top 3 or 4 kind of things that drive the winter pattern typically, but there's increasing research that the sunspot cycle does drive some things in the atmosphere during the cold weather season in the northern hemisphere, and specifically when we have a quiet sun. In other words, there's not many sunspots. It's a solar minimum is what it's oftentimes referred to. That can lead to increased blocking in the high latitudes in the northern hemisphere, and blocking patterns tend to produce extremes. Sometimes that means extreme warmth. Sometimes that means extreme cold. We had a solar minimum late last decade, around 2008, 2009. We had a couple of harsh winters back then. We had solar maximum, lots of sun activity, lots of sunspots a handful of years ago, back in 2013, 14, and 15. And now we're into a solar minimum and should stay there. We're expected to stay there for another few years. Very quiet sun, it looks like, for the next few years. Now, again, this is not the most important thing that drives our winter patterns, but it is something interesting to look at and something that I'll be taking into account when I come up with our winter forecast. But I would place it below several other key ingredients that have nothing to do with the sun. They're all here on Earth, such as the ENSO cycle, El Nino, La Nina, things like that. That's stuff that's more towards the top of the list when it comes to formulating our annual winter forecast coming up in a little less than a month. Thanks for checking out tonight's weather for Weather Geeks. Enjoy another great night and another great day coming up on Thursday.